Welcome to Truths, the podcast where love for Torah, Israel, the Jewish people, and God meets fearless critical inquiry. Through powerful conversations and thought-provoking solo teachings, we explore how timeless Jewish wisdom can ignite 21st century meaning, drive personal transformation, deepen our connection to God and to one another, and inspire bold action to heal our world. Here's your host, Rabbi Dr. Levi Brackman.
Welcome back to Truths, Jewish Wisdom for Today. Thank you so much for joining. Before I begin, if you like the content of this podcast, please subscribe, like it, wherever you listen to this podcast, whether it's on YouTube, Spotify, or any of the other platforms. That really helps other people to also find it. Today on the podcast, I'm joined by a very good old friend of mine, Adam Haston. Adam and I go back almost 30 years to our yeshiva days in Morristown, where we learned together and were friends. Since then, Adam's taken a fascinating journey from serving as a Lubavitch Shliach and then helping to start a school to building a substantial real estate business as founder and managing partner of Haston Equity Group, and also completing the owner-president management program at Harvard Business School. Most recently, he's added another title to that list of achievements, that of author, with his new book, The Wonder Effect, an adventurous guide for igniting your passions and pursuing your calling. This book is a practical, very readable guide that helps you crush limiting beliefs, rediscover curiosity, and set a clear, purpose-driven direction for your life. In our conversation, we talk about why he wrote the book, how to crush idols and see through the false images we carry about ourselves, and what it really means to know yourself, and how vision, purpose, and calling intersect with Chassidic and Kabbalistic ideas like ratzon, kavana, and bittul. We also get into the uncomfortable parts, fear of success, doubts in faith, and what happens when you realize that you've been living your life for other people's expectations. So if you've ever felt stuck, restless, or unsure what your calling is, whether in business, spirituality, or in your personal life, this episode is for you. So here is my conversation with my friend Adam Haston on the wonder effect, purpose, and the search for true ecstasy.
It's great having you on Truths.
It is a pleasure to be here.
We've known each other for how many years? I mean, many, many years.
I want to say probably close to 30.
Yeah,
somewhere near there.
At least 28 years.
Yeah.
And I recently sent you a picture.
When we were in school together.
Right. And I was about 19. And now when I was my age, I'm 47. School, we were in yeshiva together.
Yep.
I don't know, is yeshiva a school?
Yeshiva is school, or sometimes it could just be sitting.
Yeah, that's true.
As the name implies. It doesn't say we're going to teach you, and it doesn't say you're going to learn. You're going to sit there, though. Now, I really feel like I learned a tremendous amount in yeshiva.
Yeah, so we were in Morristown together.
But I will say, one of the interesting things that I feel like about yeshivas in particular is that you really will get out of it what you put into it, which is true of lots of things in life in general, but I think particularly in that educational institution or that sort of makeup, it's something where if you put in a lot of effort, you're given a lot of breath and leeway to do a lot of learning.
Or you just do a lot of sitting.
Exactly. Your point. Yeah. So that's the possibility.
Because the tests don't really lead you to any kind of qualification. So if you don't do great in the tests, that's fine. So you've done a lot of sitting, very little learning. Or you could actually do a tremendous amount of learning because the hours are there and the leeway is given to you. Great observation. Yeah, for me, I did a lot of learning. And I think you did too. Now, just to go through our history, we both were Chabad Shluchim as well. At some point,
that is correct, officer. I feel like you're building a case here.
They say, I used to have this friend.
I affirm.
I used to have this friend of mine who say, guilty as charged.
And I will say, and I feel like we've talked about it a few times, but best thing I ever did.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And it's great training for life.
Yes.
Yeah. And in general, by the way, the Chabad system where you go out there and do sales like as a youngster, because you go out and getting people to put on tefillin, etc. This is great training for life. And it gives you the kind of chutzpah that most other people don't have in their training. So
it definitely gives you enough audacity to be able to do what needs to be done in order to make a difference. Yeah. Which if it's important
in whichever endeavor you do.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And then I ended up moving here to New Haven, and you were living here. Moved here actually 6 years ago. So moved here in 2019. You were living here, and that was fantastic because moving to a community where you have old friends, that was fantastic. But
my dreams didn't play out because I thought at that time you were working for Priceline, and I just thought you were going to get me amazing deals on travel.
No. I got you amazing deals. Do you shop at Priceline?
Of course. Yeah.
Okay, then the deals you got.
I thought I'd get even better.
I was at Priceline. I ran the AI and data product team.
Okay.
So which was supposed
Are you just saying AI right now because it's
no,
the
it's
hot
true.
thing?
It's true. No. I ran because search has algorithms and related to AI as well.
Okay.
And so my team did all the AI for the company.
Amazing.
We set up a really good program, and I still use it.
Okay.
Let be very clear. There's a lot of people who worked very, very hard on Priceline, and the deals came long before I was there, and I'm sure they got a lot better since I left.
I think the impression you were trying to give was that you basically can take credit for the entire success of Priceline as a company. No, okay, fine. All
I
right,
can't do that.
Okay.
But I like to think that for the time I was there, I did make a contribution.
Yeah.
So anyway, and now you live in Florida.
Yep.
And
guilty as charged.
Yeah, and you wrote this book.
Yes, The Wonder Effect.
Called The Wonder Effect, which came out very recently, and I read cover to cover. Fantastic book, and we're going to discuss that. So thank you so much for being here.
Of course. Looking forward to the conversation. We don't need to be on a podcast to have conversations.
Yeah,
whenever we get together, it's like this one extended, continued conversation. And my experience has always been when I'm hanging out with you, we could probably go on for hours and hours.
Agreed. Yeah.
But today I heard it's a little bit different.
No. Why?
No, I'm saying not going on hours and hours.
Oh, I think that would bore.
We have different schedules. So.
Yeah, and that might bore the audience quite a bit. All right, so let's dive in because the audience doesn't know you as well as I do, and we're going to have an audience hopefully. I want to talk a little bit about what made you want to write this book, and tell me about the book.
So, firstly, I'm going to explore this openly with you. So I've been asked this question about what drove me to do it. I feel like I'm going to give a slightly unsatisfactory answer, which is to say that I made a decision that I was going to write a book. I could not necessarily point a finger to the why of that. It was something that I was drawn to, and I feel like a lot of times interests that people have, you're not necessarily people oftentimes will. I'm just being open about this. A lot of times people make a decision and then they try to back into reasons to justify their decision.
Yeah.
I think a lot of times people have certain interests or they're drawn towards something that they might give reasons to why that's the case. I don't have any reasons that I could point to specifically for why I wrote the book. But when I made the decision to write the book, then it becomes like a question of what I'm going to be communicating. And as you know, I'm in real estate, but I didn't mean.
So you saying you had a desire to write the book?
I had a desire to.
You wanted
write
to be
a
an
book.
author?
It wasn't so much on the identity side as I don't know if you're the same way, but I feel like throughout my life, I have sought adventures or challenges, and I wanted to do something different. So the marathon was something that I wanted to do, not because I consider myself a runner, but I saw it as an interesting challenge that would require something of me that I didn't know. Mm-hmm. And I felt confident that I could do it, and I feel like that about a lot of things, which is that if you make a decision and you're willing to put in the time, the effort, and the energy, you will be able to get to the end of that line, to achieve that thing, to do that thing. So I have been someone who sought these type of things. So with the marathon, for me, it was basically a one and done. I didn't have any desires. I wasn't a marathoner. I wasn't looking to be competitive on it. I had a desire to write a book. And so then after making that decision, you start to mull over what are you going to communicate? What's worth communicate.
So you didn't feel like you had a burning message that you wanted to get out there to the world, which could only be conveyed through a long form book such as this?
No, I would not say that I had a burning message when I came to write it. But like a lot of things, I think that, and I think what I would say is consistent with what's in the book, and that is that once you make that decision and then you start treading forward, it's amazing what sort of like opens up. So because you make a decision, you then then there's a whole trail of additional decisions that you have to make. As you are, I feel like I am, I value people that are thoughtful and that think. So I didn't think that I had anything necessarily when I decided to do it. I didn't think that I wanted to contribute something into the world of business, which at the time that I wrote the book, I've been in business for since 2017. Mm-hmm. So yes, we were both on Shlichus there, and after I went on Shlichus, I then helped start a private elementary school. After that, I felt like I had, in a macro way, meaning in a career way, I felt that I had contributed a lot, and I also felt at the same time that I might be doing a disservice to my personal family, and I wanted to give back, if you will, to them. They had made sacrifices for me, and I wanted to be able to contribute and to take care of them in a way that I thought was at least the way that I was going to try to take care of my family. So
from a financial perspective,
many other ones.
But the business would be primarily financially.
Correct, but I also think that if you're able to get financially successful to a certain point, it also changes other things.
Absolutely.
Meaning, it's not just
100%.
I have money to be able to give you. Again, the guy that like is, I don't want to name any specific names, but the guy that whoever you imagine is like ridiculously successful. Oftentimes they've gone too far with that. If you want some type of, you want to be a good father, that person oftentimes is not. So that wasn't that wasn't the way that I was going to go about it. My point,
you were going to balance, make sure it's balanced.
So my point though about this is that I had no desire to write specifically about business or real estate or any of this other kind of stuff.
When did you decide you wanted to write the book?
I would say about 3 or 4 years ago. So I had already been in it for some time and had seen
You're already
what
5 years into business.
Successes. Yeah. So then the advice that clarified it for me was, they basically said, the guidance was, if you are going to write the book, you don't write to an audience, just like you don't in a podcast or in other venues. You don't speak to an audience, you speak to an individual. And so you have to have an avatar that you're writing towards. So like, from my perspective, who do I care about most? My family, my kids.
Yeah.
Obviously my wife, but I didn't think that she needed any of my
our spouses know all the books we've written and ever going to write already.
So in my mind, it was, my kids will be at a point from, let's say, 18 to 25, and if I could distill all of like the advice, guidance, good outlook, if I could distill that into a book and hand it to them, this is what it would be. Yeah. Now, in having had some of these conversations before, I feel like the need to point out that the unique part about an 18 to 25-year-old is that the world of possibilities stands before them, meaning they feel that they are at the precipice of being able to, if they chose to do anything, the world is open to them.
Yeah.
Now, the reason I'm pointing that out is because I actually think that that's true even when you're 30, 40, or 50 and beyond. It's just that at a certain point, you have bought into your own mindset, and so you don't look at it that way. So if I'm trying to deliver this message, I still want it to be understood that this applies beyond 18 to 25. It's just that at that time period, you actually see your life in front of you, and you haven't necessarily had those same limitations put on it.
And I'm just curious, have your kids read the book?
So I have, again, as you know, I have different ages of kids. Yeah. Some of them have, and some of them are working through it. What's funny,
but they're all interested in reading.
Yes, very much so. Yeah. What's sort of funny is, this is like a bit of a self-critique that I heard both a speaker and an author once say. I think it was Dennis Prager, just for the sake of quoting. I think that he said that a person who's a good writer is one who writes with simple words. Meaning, if you write with too much convolution or too many big words, then you lose the reader, and you're not if you can't say it in a simpler way, you're not necessarily as good of a writer. So some of the critique that I'll say with that is that some of my kids, either it's in the education that they got and that they don't know some of the words, or it's that I didn't use words that are accessible to all. So that's
there's no academies. If anyone,
no, definitely not.
There is no academies in this book. I can attest to that. So no one should be afraid of the accessibility of this book, from my opinion.
Like, some people might not know what the word serendipity is.
Right. Okay. Yeah, there's a good movie.
Yes.
With that.
I don't remember which one, but there was a good. There've probably been several, but yeah.
So if you got a movie titled that, then you're probably okay. using the words.
There is a movie title with that? Oh, okay.
There's a movie called Serendipity.
Okay, all right.
I think so.
Well, then people should know the word then,
Yeah.
if it's been made into a movie.
Or maybe, unless it's rated R.
Okay.
Then your kid wouldn't know it.
No. Probably not.
All right, so that was your motivation, but then you decided that this is guidance for your children in many ways.
And I would say, again, what it ultimately ended up becoming is just really guidance for how I would advocate that people look at their lives and the way that they think about making decisions and the way they think about planning and the way they think about what they actually could do if they simply allowed themselves the bandwidth, the space, the capacity to actually go after some interests that they have.
Now, you have in this book a whole section or an argument about like having a vision for yourself. And to talk a little bit about that, because whatever you want to do in life, it starts off somewhere. Your book started off with having a vision for the book, and you manifested it some way. So how does this work? How does having a vision for something take you to actually manifesting that vision?
Right. So I think the quote's in the book, but it's really one of my favorite quotes, which is from Alice in Wonderland, which is, if you don't know where you want to go, then any road will get you there. So if you have no idea of a destination in mind and you have no details or ideas for what that should look like, then you will never get to that, because you're going to get wherever you're going to go, and you may likely feel a sense of just dissatisfaction because you didn't get what you maybe hoped for, but you didn't necessarily actually verbalize, actually take the time to be thoughtful about your life.
Yeah.
So I think this is not specifically in the book in this way, but what I believe might happen is that people put the how in front, meaning before the vision. And since they don't see how they could get to something, they don't want to like pre-disappoint themselves. They don't want to be disappointed in advance because they don't yet have the how. I just would say that it's actually what works is the reverse. So if you end up creating the vision, and if you can create it in as tactile and as a real way as possible, then the how gets backed into. So what's amazing, I mean, again, for me, like when I wrote this, there's like tools that I wish they existed for different reasons, but I would have written about AI as tools to use for this. But basically, like, there are lots of ways that you could simply use ChatGPT to help with this envisioning.
Or Gemini or...
any of them. Yes, I don't care. Not sponsored by one or the other. I don't really care.
Right.
But the point is, just in case somebody doesn't know how this works, a simple prompt would be, I'm trying to create a vision for my life and for what I want to do over the next 3 to 5 years. Can you ask me 30 questions that if I answer those 30 questions, you will then be able to help me in that process? That's the way that I will use it for stuff. And so when you do that, like, you start to see what's possible, and you should actually start to get somewhat excited, or as some might say with hispilus, you get a sense of excitement because you're starting to see what is possible. And that actually pulls you into that future. There was a...
So one second, hold on. Pulls you into that future because, as you know, this season of the podcast is about ecstasy. And one of the... Actually, we just recently learned in the Gemara that in Daf Yomi, in the direction that a person wants to go, they are led. And this idea of them being led in the direction that you want to go, they learn it from Bilam and Balak, etc. We won't get into the details of that. But is there a religious aspect to this? Is there a spiritual aspect to this? Or is this just a very practical guide of how do you make money?
You're talking about what I'm saying?
Yeah. Oh, like from your perspective, because this is truth, Jewish wisdom for today. We're trying to ground it in. Were these ideas grounded in your? I mean, you are a rabbi, were representing Judaism. You're a principal of a school. etc. So how were these grounded in these religious ideas? The book itself is for a general audience, so this isn't necessarily like the Jewish guide to.
Right.
But as we're talking for this audience, tell me a little bit about these ideas. How did you come to them, and how are they grounded, or maybe they're not grounded, in the religious perspective?
So I feel weird comparing myself to the Alter Rebbe in this way, okay? But for this
The Alter Rebbe, for those who don't know,
Yes.
Shnei Zalman V'Liadi, the Baal HaTanya, he wrote Shulchan Aruch, the founder of Chabad Chassidut.
So like if you took Tanya could quite literally be made into a self-help book. There's
One might argue it is a self-help book.
I would have no disagreement in it. But I would even say further, which is that the tools that are in there.
Well, it's one of the Sifrei Musar for sure in many ways. So it fits in with that, into that genre of character development for sure.
All I mean to point out with that is that there's tools in there that can help Jews and non-Jews alike.
For sure.
That book though is anchored in an achievement that is inherently religious or inherently theological. Meaning all of it is oriented around that. So I wouldn't necessarily say that what I wrote in this book is intended as a theological treatise. Where I feel that does cross over though is at the very end. Spoiler alert! No, just kidding. No, but basically all of
what
the
you're
chapters,
saying is you have to read to the very end. Right. Is what you're saying.
No, I was going to say what the end says. But I'm saying the arc of the book is set up in a way where really all of the front end chapters until the very end are tools that help towards cultivating a different you, a different future, a different possibilities. But what I end up saying at the end, and I didn't intend it for it to be like at the end. It could have actually been the first chapter, and the other ones would have gone after it. But basically, is this idea which, again, there's many parallels in this, but I think one of the parallels would probably be with Viktor Frankl and Man's Search for Meaning, which is essentially saying that purpose is the essential driver that we have, and everything else emerges from that.
Yeah, it's the highest level construct.
So the way that I would frame it, like from a Jewish standpoint, is the classical teaching about the idea of giving tzedakah, which is meiser, which the play on words is about the similarity between a tenth and wealth, which is the same Hebrew word etymologically.
Aseh b'chdei shetisasher.
Yes.
Or give tithes in order you should become wealthy.
Right.
Yeah.
So in other words, you're enriched in the process of giving.
Yeah.
So then the question is, which came first, the chicken or the egg on that one? I would end up arguing in some way, as Viktor Frankl would probably argue, which is purpose comes first. So in other words, if you have a deep sense of purpose and you have a deep drive towards contribution, there's lots of other things and ways that you can change yourself, cultivate yourself.
How are you defining purpose here?
So I can tell you religiously, or I could tell you generally.
Because you're using the word and you're saying if you have a deep drive towards purpose.
Right. So yes.
What is that?
So I would say
Or is the purpose the drive?
Sure, no problem. So I think there are, let's say, purposes that are theological. I think that there are purposes that are cultural. I think there are purposes that are personal. Okay, so I think that there are different. Again, I would.
Can you have ignoble purpose? Like, does purpose have to be noble, or you can have ignoble purposes? Like,
when you say ignoble, do you mean it in the same way as?
Like, for example, we should never use Hitler as an example, but he was the person who probably had the most ignoble purpose.
I just want to make sure ignoble is bad, correct?
Yeah,
okay,
non-noble.
I just wanted to make sure
because
there's words that sound similar, but they're not actually the opposites. They're just like amoral doesn't mean immoral; it means non-morality.
Yeah. So there is an argument in the purpose literature which basically says that.
Which didn't you make a platform or something?
My PhD is on purpose and meaning in life.
So I shouldn't be talking to you.
No, but I find it interesting. You've written a book on it, just that my book no one's ever read, except for my PhD supervisor. On occasion, it gets cited in some papers
What's
somewhere.
What's the name of it, and where can people purchase it?
It's actually, you can purchase it on Amazon. I put it up there, but not one person's ever purchased it.
What's the name of it?
You can download it for free off the Australian Catholic University.
What's the name? Why are you hiding
it?
I'm sorry.
That's fine. It's cool. the
That's
audience
the
can
book.
see it.
Wow. Okay, for the sake of comparison, he's smarter than me.
No, not necessarily. Well,
this is all reference.
many more people have read your book than my book. But this is fostering purpose, meaning in life across a lifespan.
Amazing. That's
So,
amazing.
but no, but I wonder what you've thought about it.
The answer to your question, which I feel that people would find uncomfortable, sure, you could have an immoral purpose.
Yeah. Okay.
And
I agree.
And I would say, in thinking about it,
purpose is something innately, and something which you feel, or is it? What's your perspective on it? Because I know there's lots of people who've done work on trying to very well define it. And from a psychological perspective, if you want to measure it, you have to first define it. So as part of the work I did in my PhD was defining purpose in life. And then based on the definition that I had to kind of figure out, does that actually exist in humans? And then if it does exist, now how do I measure it? And then I have to measure it if I want to do the research I was doing. But that's all from a psychological perspective. I think what you're talking about is from a very practical human life perspective.
Right. So I would basically say that the purpose is basically an answer to the question of why are you here and what are you for? As simple as that.
But is that like a God-given purpose, or is this something which you discover within yourself?
So this is the very reason why I'm saying that I would categorize purposes like truths in different slots.
Okay.
So in other words,
so people can have different purposes for different aspects of their life.
Absolutely. So in other words, you
have
the part of your purpose is to be a good father, to be a good husband. Those are not the same thing.
Yeah. One ought to at least feel that that's part of one's purpose, if one is a father.
But yes, of course. But at the same time, you might have a more social purpose on top of those. So I would not say that there's a singular one that is your only purpose. There might be some that, again, depending on who people are, there might be some that are weighted differently. So that's how I look at purpose. So I don't think that it's inherently religious. I do think that I think that there's a purpose for the world's existence, which is on a more macro level. And then I think that there's a more micro level purpose. So that's how I think about it.
When I think about purpose, or at least from a religious perspective, what got me really interested in purpose in life was actually what I learned in the Kabbalah and in Sifrei Chassidut about the idea of ratzon, which is also keter. And anyone who's studied this or has done previous episodes of my podcast where we went through the Kabbalah Ta'ari, in the 10 Sefirot, the highest one, or the one above the 10 Sefirot, is the idea of keter, which is also ratzon. And ratzon is even more hidden than chokhmah. And that is something which is, in many ways, the etzam hanefesh. Some people call it yeshiva benefesh. That somehow we have this innate will and this innate drive to do something. And it's kind of ineffable. We don't know why we have it. But somehow we have it. We just have a will to life, a will to something that starts off with this will, this desire can be awoken somehow by you see something that, oh, I want that, I would like to do that, etc. And I became fascinated with this idea of, what is this? How does this work? How can I all of a sudden awaken this desire, this drive towards something? I might not know what it is yet. And I think that in your book, you go through really good steps for people to actually be able to awaken some kind of desire, or figure out, to whet the appetite, to awaken that ratzon, which maybe they didn't know they had, in order to be able to then cultivate it to a full-blown passion and desire to go after that thing, which is what's needed in order to be able to actually, as you said, you need to have a vision, and then it needs to sustain you to be able to actually complete it and get it done. So give us like some of the highlights of like what are the steps? I know you have it in the book, but for the audience, hopefully they'll go and read the book as well. But what are the steps that you suggest people should do in order to be able to figure out what that purpose can be for them? Sure.
I will answer it, but you made me think about something in the title that actually feel like speaks the subtitle, that speaks to it. So, because I think it speaks to two different things. So it says igniting your passions and pursuing your calling. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm gonna look at it in reverse. A calling is something that comes from without, meaning it's something that's external.
Mm-hmm.
So
you're called to do it.
You're called to do something because the circumstances or the situation requires it. So that's something that I would say is more on the macro side of things. You are called to solve a problem, and you're the person who can solve that problem. Whereas igniting your passions, I would say, is more of a sense of more on a micro or personal level where you have interests and you allow yourself to flame those interests. That just as so it's purpose on both ends is how I'm thinking about it from the way that you're asking the question. What I would say is that, again, just to your question, which you were asking about, like what's the process. So, I mean, I'm not going to show it on screen, but I'm just saying it's a very step-by-step process.
Yeah.
The first part of it is crushing idols. Crushing idols essentially means you can never get rid of biases. Like inherently, that's the way we're built. However, I think that you can at least become either more aware of them or you can diminish their impact on the way that you make decisions or the way you think about yourself. Ultimately, what I'm saying is that you need to extract certain things out of your life in order for you to even have any sort of sense of awareness of who you are, what you're capable of, what you can accomplish or achieve. Like what then allows you to even dream or think what's possible. So that's the next step, which is the know yourself. So that's simply having the space to be able to get a sense of what's possible for you, and then you can pull on that thread, which is once you have a sense of knowing yourself, so then you can create that vision that we were talking about. When you have that vision and you make...
Okay, let's double click on the knowing yourself part of it.
Okay, yep.
Getting rid of your biases, I think it's a very, very hard thing to do.
I do not disagree.
Yeah, and knowing yourself is also incredibly hard.
There's a great book that I read, which is called, and the person I'll say who I heard recommended is Malcolm Gladwell. Okay. Right. Now, what was, and I like a lot of his writing, and I don't want to say that I'm aligned with a lot of his writing. What I like about his writing is he's very counterintuitive, and he tells great stories, and he communicates interesting lessons in different ways that you might not have thought about before. So that, in general, is something that speaks to me.
From Malcolm Gladwell? Or?
Yeah, Malcolm Gladwell.
Oh, yeah.
And that's like the way...
One of the greats.
Right, of course.
Every writer wants to be Malcolm Gladwell.
But I feel like it's rare for that type of writer to give a book recommendation because he's always promoting his own books. So he gave a book recommendation. He
doesn't need to promote anymore, that dude. Yeah.
So he gave a book recommendation which is called Strangers to Ourselves.
Yeah.
Okay. And basically the premise of the book is that we think because we are ourselves that we know ourselves best.
Yeah.
Okay. And and essentially a major point that the book makes is that if you want to know yourself, ask everyone else about you, and then you'll get to know who you really are. Because you oftentimes have no idea how anyone perceives you, or basically, based on all the actions and interactions that you have with people, if you actually seek guidance from the people that have interacted most with you, you'll actually have a way of knowing yourself. And the only reason I'm saying this is to say that, yes, sometimes we are complete strangers to ourselves.
Yeah. It's interesting. I suppose that's one way of getting to know yourself, but I'm
not saying it's the only way. Just because it's the main point is that we're not always.
I find that when I talk to people about meditation, for example, most people, they shut down immediately when I start talking about it. Oh, I could never do that. Oh. And then I'll say to them, well, why not? And they'll say, but I've tried it. And I'll say, okay, and how did it go? I got bored after 2 minutes, is what they're saying. Or they just can't sit still with themselves for more than 30 seconds. They just can't do it. They get nervous.
Or they can't quiet the mind, or tons of thoughts are coming in.
But that's fine. Meditation.
I'm saying that's
I don't
what
hear that
people
from
might
people.
Say. Oh, no? Okay.
I hear just people, they get nervous. It makes them anxious. They just can't sit there straight for a moment. They can't. People find it very difficult to sit with themselves and to get to know themselves. It's probably the same reason why people won't ask other people, hey, tell me what you think of me. People are scared of themselves.
Right. What would you attribute that to? Do you think they're just not happy with who they are?
I think people feel very, very uncomfortable with who they are because people, on the whole, are living not for themselves but for other people. People are very much looking and saying, am I doing this? Does that person think well of me this way? That person there? People aren't really marching to the beat of their own drums. And people inherently know that about themselves, and they're constantly trying to, and I think that makes people scared of looking themselves in the mirror of who they truly are. I think that's part of the reason. I think smashing the idols is also so interesting, because when I hear smashing the idols, what I'm hearing is like image. You know, we all have this self-image.
Because an idol is an image.
It is an image. And we all have some kind of self-image which we're trying really hard to protect. And one of the reasons why people don't want to get to know themselves is because people, I think, inherently understand that if they really stare at themselves too deeply, that image is just not going to stand up to scrutiny. And they're really afraid of that.
Feeling not being able to sit with themselves because they're not comfortable with who they are.
Yeah.
Meaning when they finally sit down and are actually thinking about the decisions that they're currently making, what's possible for their future, they might not actually be happy with what they see. So they'd rather put back the blinders on, if you will, and just keep going because it's too uncomfortable to consider who they are at present.
Yeah, that's true. But I don't even think but people don't go through that thought process.
No. That happens like in an instant.
Yeah.
Like they don't even go through the consciousness of that.
Yeah,
it's
exactly.
just, there was a phenomenal...
You asked me off the top of my head why people. I think that might be one of the reasons. I'm sure there's more to it than that.
There was there was a phenomenal, like probably one of my favorite of all time movies was Memento. It came out probably 20 or 30 years ago. And basically...
I've never watched Memento.
Okay, so this is like, on a filmmaking level, an absolute stroke of genius. Basically, it's dealing with somebody who has short-term memory loss. Mm-hmm. So the whole film, I think it goes like backwards. Okay, it starts at the end and it slowly goes backwards. And you would never think that you could tell that story, any story, completely backwards. Mm-hmm. But it's slowly revealing the pieces of how he got to the end from the beginning of the movie. I don't know if that makes sense. Mm-hmm. But the most striking, so he's driven by this purpose of solving his wife's murder. Okay, mm-hmm. And that's what he's doing throughout the movie. What ends up happening to be the truth is that
he murdered them.
He murdered them.
Yeah,
and he is so uncomfortable by that fact.
Yeah.
That he's seeking to so he forgets it, and so then he just lives with this continual blinders on, where he's just repeating himself, trying to solve the murder of his wife when he's the one who murdered them. Anyway, just an interesting way.
I've read about it. I've never watched it.
That it tells the story, and I think that it's a lot of times true for people. So for people that are uncomfortable with themselves or for making decisions, I'm not sure if the book's right for them. No, I'm just joking.
No, I think...
No, what I mean to say, though, is like you have to be willing to go through that discomfort.
Yeah. And so facing yourself, your own biases, and realizing that decisions you've made or you make about your life perhaps are wrong, and they're based on a bias that you have, which comes from who knows where, and perhaps you ought not even have them. Right? That's step one.
Because if you don't remove that, though, then like you're just like going along that same route of like basically there's this great line. I'm trying to remember who had said it right now, but it's if you don't think for yourself, people will think for you without thinking of you.
Yeah.
And it's the way that it is. If you're not thinking for yourself, everyone's going to tell you what to do.
Yeah. Most people are doing that anyway.
Right.
But to me, it also seems like we go through life and we put all these, I'm going to use the word clothing, armor on ourselves to protect ourselves. You know, when you're a very little child, you're a baby. You know, everyone loves babies. They're so cute, etc. But slowly you realize that people start to hurt you. They call you names, say this and that, and you build all this armor, and you try and do something so that you're in school, that mean kid doesn't call you a name, or etc. And that's how it goes through life. And people end up building all these things around them, which are all being put there by other people, or as a reaction to other people.
Or from your own personal experiences that you have.
Right, based on your experiences that you've had mostly with other people. You're going to get burnt once, you're going to make sure the next time you wear a glove or something to make sure you don't get burnt. And that's...
And psychologically, it's the same thing with experiencing traumas. So you then try to develop methods to prevent having those negative experiences again.
Yeah.
And the problem with that is that you might have developed that at a very young or immature age.
Yeah.
And that solution that you have put in place may no longer be playing out or be useful to you, but you're still holding on to it.
And you're still doing it. Yeah. And that all plays into your biases, but also your self-image of how you see yourself. And you can't get beyond that. And people make this mistake to think that is who they are. That's not who they are at all.
No.
So I think it's very interesting when we talk about like seeking ecstasy. I think that it's the same thing, because you're never going to have a personal encounter with the divine if you think that you're all these things, which is not who you are.
And interestingly, I mean, again, that is the idea of the problem with literal idolatry.
Yeah.
Which is you've created images that are contradictory or serving something else outside of the one that you're supposed to. So it would be like somebody. I know that a lot of times in like within Yiddishkeit or within Torah, there's the metaphor of husband and wife in that relationship. So it would be like having a polyamorous relationships while you're trying to at the same time have a close relationship with your wife. Those two things do not work
or
together.
Just, you don't have to go that far. You can just say, just like you just never have full disclosure to her.
Okay.
You know, you're hiding things about who you are to your spouse. That's going to avoid the ability to have that kind of intimate relationship that you need.
Because you're putting up barriers.
Yeah, the barriers are there.
And you don't feel comfortable to be vulnerable. And if you're not comfortable to be vulnerable, then you're not opening yourself up to the possibilities of being accepted for the chaotic mess that you might be. Or the most wonderful person that you might be.
Everyone in the core are most wonderful. I mean this.
But I think
I mean, like, if once you're able to, what's the word you use? Once you're able to crush those false idols and know yourself, then you can have that disclosure, which is beautiful, because everyone on that level is just a wonderful human being.
So in the same way that you were talking about clothing, I think that is part and parcel with this point, which is that the mess we might feel like inside is because we have put an image that's not, it might not even be realistically livable up to. Meaning, you may say perfection is the only level to be at, and if I'm not living up to perfection, then I'm a wreck. Which is not a true statement. It's just, but it might be the way people think.
And that perfection is probably someone else's vision of perfection for you, not your own vision at all.
Right. And if it was in physical blemishes, that's why people would then put on clothing.
Yeah.
Same might.
But you have psychological clothing, you have spiritual clothing, etc. And so I mean, these ideas are relevant not just to career. That's why.
Correct.
Or to financial success. They're relevant to also interpersonal success. I think it's interesting that in America, a lot of men have a specific problem with friends. Someone was telling me that it was criticizing their father. Someone was criticizing their father, telling me, oh, my father has no friends. I'm like, dude, your father and 98% of other American men don't have friends. And I think that part of this is because there's false idols. Everyone's trying to live up to something which they think someone else wants. How can you be friends if you're never meeting the person? You're just meeting the image that they want to portray of themselves to you.
What I'm curious about from your standpoint, and I will respond to this too, but somebody that I don't know if they read the entire book, but they questioned me on the book from the religious standpoint, and I think that what their question had to do with was the concern that these type of ideas that I have in the book may lead somebody who's, let's say, the religious from Bacher or whatever in yeshiva to say, I'm gonna throw it all off in order to become my whatever self. Now, I'm curious if how you think. I will answer this too, but I'm curious because this is me actually employing that thing of like. I don't want to feel like I have to defend it. I'm just curious how you think about that.
That never occurred to me when I read it, but also I'm not coming from that perspective.
No, I understand.
Yeah, I think that.
But that would be true also of like some, I don't know, kid that's raised in like Christianity or anywhere else. That like I just don't think that's the message that I'm.
I don't think it's the message, but I think that person, whoever came to you, I don't know who they are, but their religion suffers from something in particular, which is that what happens. And William James talks about this in his book.
I call him Billy. He and I are close.
In his book, The Rise of Religious Experiences. But he basically says that what happens is that all religions started with iconoclasts. Abraham, for example, right? They break the idols, right? They crush the false idols. But as soon as the religion then becomes organized and it becomes... then all of a sudden, anyone who wants to crush idols becomes the enemy of that religion.
Right.
So the person, ironically, if you want to truly emulate the person who founded the religion, the iconoclast who founded the religion, you can no longer be part of the religion. And I think whoever said that to you, what they're afraid of is that structure which has been built in order to protect that which the iconoclast came to teach. And I would say that that's just the wrong way of looking at it. In other words, like an iconoclast for being in the sake of iconoclast. Now, someone coming just to crush the idols
is not
just to crush idols. They're going to crush everything, including the true idols and the false idols. But if you're really coming there to crush the false idols and you're being honest about that, and if some of those false idols happen to be the organized religion that you think you need to protect, so be it. Like, I wouldn't worry about that.
So there was an interesting thing that I think it was last week or the week before.
Do you agree with what I'm saying? Or?
No, I do agree with what you're saying. The way that to further your point, I would say that the Baal Shem Tov would be an example of this, where
absolutely.
He's going against like the common trend of the time, and so he's looked down upon. But then emerging from that are Chassidim that have this similar. Again, I'm saying Chassidim in general, like not all groups, whatever. I'm just saying. Like,
Hasidism is an example of this.
Yeah. So I understand the point you're making with that, and I, for the most part, agree. But the way that I would almost like further make it, we have to. The vision, at least that I have, and maybe this is a naive one, I'll be open to that. But the vision that I try to see, or that I adopt as far as the way that we have to be, at least Jewishly, is that we're in it not because we're forced to be in it, but because of the beauty that there is. So that kind of approach doesn't sit with me, because what I've sometimes said to parents of like new bar mitzvah kids, like, an Chabad or whatever, was like, what I try to teach my kids, they have to own their life. Like, it's their life now, and you cannot be living my life. Now, again, I think that the values that I'm conveying are earth-shatteringly amazing, and I think that the way that I'm trying to instruct you is because I feel like it is the best thing for you and the best thing for the world. Like, I say that and I mean what I say. And if the experience that they have is that it's terrible, you don't need my book to like get you out of that. You're probably going to be leaving it anyway. Yeah. So that's sort of how
you would think people live in lots of terrible
that's true too.
Situations that don't leave it.
But I just wanted, like, there was this one idea that I thought was interesting.
But maybe your book would help them leave it if it's terrible for them.
What I would hope that it would do is allow them to realize, if I was going to say it in my way, would be that I would hope that they would be able to be free of seeing that the Judaism that the negative experience that they had isn't it? Yeah, and that doesn't have to be their Judaism. Yeah. That's the limitation on it, that they're absorbing this as the thing.
That takes a lot of maturity, yeah.
Well, I agree with you, but what I would say is that's what people need, and I might not say it's maturity, but it's being thoughtful and considered and being reflective and trying to own your life with not trying to take on all of the things that might be the negative experiences that shaped your way of looking at something. Yeah. So there's this.
Some of those negative experiences are associated with the very negative people who didn't know themselves and were really living their lives for other people and were, in this term, idolaters.
I wouldn't say it as strongly, but
they had the false idols, right? I'm using your language.
Yes, I know. Conceptually,
yeah. Not that we should burn them at the stake for being over every desire. That's what I mean. Yeah.
What's funny is I came across a term that I'm pretty sure it's not in the book, but I came across it recently, and I did think it was an interesting way of looking at it, which I do feel is like related to this to some degree, which is, and I liked the terminology too. That's why it stuck with me. So there's the terminology is called the Jonah complex, okay? Which essentially is describing the fear that we have, the fear of success, and the implications of that. So I just put two and two together to assume that the reason it's called the Jonah complex is because
He ran away from.
He ran away from doing what God asked him to do because he was afraid he would succeed in that mission.
Yeah.
And that mission would be non-Jews of the town of Nineveh listening to the message and repenting and being good again. And he didn't want that to negatively impact the Jews. Mm-hmm. So, which he obviously was Jewish. So this idea of the fear of success is not something that I actually wrote about in here, but I think that it's something that's also worthwhile in this part of the conversation of saying, which is that, again, similarly to the recent story, at least as far as the way that we read the Torah, of the Meraglim, the spies that went in. Mm-hmm. So one interpretation is that the 10 spies were afraid of success. What would the success be? That they go into Israel and have to live a life that's plowing, reaping, sowing, and doing all the regular stuff, rather than having that complete transcendental experience that they had of being close and being at one with God in the desert, having the man, all the miracles, being surrounded, which what I think is so interesting that I want to connect to the thematic part where this episode is on ecstasy, which is that itself could be the false idol, in the sense that
100%.
You're seeking a certain experience
100%.
that what might actually be needed might not be enjoyable, but it might be what you're called on, or something that 100%. You can do. So I just think that is
that and in all the literature they talk about that. In other words, and as a matter of fact, that is part of, if you talk about early Chabad, right after you mentioned the Alter Rebbe or Shinizam of the Adi earlier on, when he passed away, he had one of his students, who was actually his main student, Rabban Halevi Horowitz, or as he's known, Mr. Ashela, and his son, who was Dov Ber, who became known as the Mittler Rebbe. And there was a schism. One went this way, one went that way. And one wrote this book called Tracts on Ecstasy, or Kunst des Spilus. And in it, he actually is very critical of any kind of real feeling of ecstasy. The second there's there's an individual who feels the ecstasy, you've got a problem. Whereas Rabbi Aaron, he was of the opinion that, well, you're never going to get to that level of ecstasy if you don't start off allowing yourself to feel it. And it's really interesting because in the literature, they have this thing called the unitive experience. The unitive experience is a very unique and difficult experience to get to, but it's in the literature everywhere, where you actually feel that you lose.
You lose a sense of self and become one with...
some people call it flow. Some people call it flow. It's also known as nirvana if you're of a different persuasion. But this idea of this...
You're talking about the band from Seattle in the 1990s?
That too.
Some people call it Pearl Jam. No, I'm just joking.
But the point is that the true ecstasy is losing total sense of self, where you feel this total oneness with everything, and that there is no separation.
And I wonder if the way that experience gets described is an after the fact. In other words, they talk about this idea.
It has to be.
Right.
It has to be. And so that's that's where everyone's trying to, anyone who's on a spiritual journey, that's what bittul is, by the way. Real bittul is that you're losing, your self-image is gone, you've had total surrender. You don't feel any separation between you and anything else.
I feel like I mean it. I know it sounds simple, but I feel like we just went on a whole journey.
Yeah.
Right in that moment of conversation.
Right. Yeah, and that happens, right? But the point is that it starts off with crushing the false idols.
Right.
Right. In other words, you're never going to be able to, whether it's you're seeking your purpose in your career, whether you're trying to make money, whatever. It's really interesting how it really all. So when you say you were writing like the Alter Rebbe, I mean. You could your next book, the sequel, should probably be.
That was not my quote. That's your quote. But
you said no. You said you feel.
I said I don't want to compare. I said what
I'm comparing.
Right.
But the sequel could be like how to reach nirvana through the wonder effect. You start off chicken soup for the soul, and then you have chicken soup for the.
Right.
You can have a whole series of it.
Yeah, it's definitely possible, and again, I think that there was this book series when I don't know if you're this way, but I'm a very skeptical person, so I need to.
Oh no, I'm very gullible.
So You heard it here. No, so I feel like I was really explorative. For those who don't know, I'm a Balchuva, and I did not grow up religious. I went to yeshiva when I was quite young. I went when I was 16, and I don't want to say I was self-taught because I obviously applied myself, and there were resources. But I, would create stacks of flashcards to make sure. Like I taught myself, Hebrew, Aramaic, Yiddish, so that I could study everything. Again. There's lots of people that far exceeded my level of academia, but I worked really hard at it. And in this exploration of all this, there were these two books that I read, which I thought were interesting, and I'll tell you why I'm referencing them. But I think conceptually it's interesting. Which is, one was called Permission to Believe, and the second was called Permission to Receive. Okay, and
the authors were.
Layman, maybe, I can't remember exactly, but obviously Jewish books, meaning because I was studying.
That's what you're into then.
Yeah. So Permission to Believe was basically like I can sum up lots of the ideas, lots of rational arguments for God's existence.
Yeah.
And the title explained it, which is, this gives you permission.
Yeah.
There's no lock 100% proof.
Yeah.
And that's true both ways. If you don't want to feel like a complete moron and you want to feel like there is some rational arguments to be made to that. And then the second was Permission to Receive, which was a similar approach, but as far as like the truthfulness of Torah. So the way that I would toy with the wonder effect is basically permission to succeed. In other words, what holds so many people back is like what we're talking about, the false idols, the idolatry, that not having any sense of who we are or what we could be. Basically, we've already minimized ourselves. Don't even give yourself the permission to explore and to grow. So that's sort of like the way that I would look at it. I feel like I went on a tangent there, but
no, it's interesting because.
And again, success, I always feel like it gets boxed into financial, and it isn't what it's like we were talking about before. There's many areas of life that is one, and yes, I'm saying sometimes people get limited there, but they also get limited in not even thinking that they can be a good fill in the blank artist, doctor, roadster, race car driver, whatever. Like literally whatever you would want to do, people will just automatically shut themselves down from feeling like they're enough to be able to go do something in that area or explore that area or that thing. That's all.
Yeah. Let's double click on the permission for a moment, because permission to do all these things. But so paradoxically, it seems it's interesting because this week I just released an episode where I had a conversation with Professor Moshe Koppel. Those who are listening can look up, they can go back and look at it. But he says that how many Balei Tshuva do you know who became Balei Tshuva because they intellectually found some proof, etc.? He says it never happens. He says somehow they find that they enjoy it, talks to them, and then they go back and then they find the beliefs or the permission to believe in that thing.
Right. I'm not sure about that. I'm just saying I'm not sure. But the thing that I want to expand on is, the explanation that I heard, which I found interesting, was after someone has an experience of, and I'm not saying this is every Balchuva either, but I'm saying like I'm speaking to one specific idea, and I'll explain how I'm extrapolating onto this. So you have people that have an experience, God forbid, where a family member or someone passes away. So they're obviously not literally, but their heart breaks. And in that cracking, something opens. And the way that they saw the way things are just ain't so anymore.
Yep.
And that openness allows for, or in this case, gives permission to change something.
Yep.
That you wouldn't have otherwise seen or been allowed yourself to see because you were encrusted in a certain reality. That change shifted reality for you. So as far as like the Balchuva, so again, everyone has biases, so maybe that's true of me. I do feel like I was very rigorous in going after it and still struggle with lots of doubts. But I don't think that I feel like it would be a disservice to almost anybody to say that there are people out there that don't have doubts. And I feel like the people that don't have doubts, they probably aren't reflective enough, frankly.
Yeah.
Meaning, or they're lying to themselves. It's impossible to... I don't know. That's what I believe. I believe it's impossible to be with 100% certainty about anything.
Yeah, no, completely agree. It's interesting. The reason why I say this is because I think there's some truth to the permission to believe in the sense, because there is an experiential aspect to this, which is ineffable. In other words, there's a part to everything. Like when you find your calling, your purpose in life, whatever it is, you've gone through your process and you find this thing, that this is your thing. Right. You know, this is the thing that you're going to sacrifice a huge amount in order to be able to achieve. If you want to be successful in business, you want to be successful at anything, you're going to have to decide there's a bunch of things you're not going to be doing now, and you're going to be doing this instead, right? It could be you're not going to be watching your Netflix seasons, but it could be you're not going to be spending as much time with your family. It could be there's lots of things you're going to have to potentially give up in order to do this thing. Once you find that thing and it clicks in some kind of way, then now that becomes a purpose, right? That becomes something which you're willing to really sacrifice for. And then you might go back. There's always that idea of ratzon, right? Of will.
Right. You were saying that earlier. Did we end up getting to the end of that arc? I don't know if we did or not.
I don't know.
Okay.
But where it starts off from is like that you don't know why I want this thing.
Right.
And somehow afterwards we fill in the gaps and we can give it a reason for it, why we want it. But then it's never really a legitimate thing. We want it because we want it. Well, why do you want it? It's very hard to actually give logical reasons for why you want it. But there are things you can give to make yourself feel better intellectually for why you want it. And I think that the religious experience is very, very similar to that, which is why they say that for the believers, there are no questions, and for the skeptics, there are no answers.
Right.
Because it really starts off from some kind of a religious experience that they have. And if you don't have that, it's just like you can't explain to someone why they should fall in love with somebody.
Right.
So I feel
you could explain it.
But it's not going to work, right? They're just not going to feel it. But once someone's in love, they can give all the reasons why they're in love with this person. So I mean, I think that's in many ways. So the permission to believe is like a very interesting one. I think that's right, and therefore the permission to, there is something out there for you which you're going to find absolutely passionate about, and you're going to be willing to give a lot up for, and to do it. You need to discover what that is. You need to start dating to go out there and find it.
And that really is that next step in there, by the way. So like that, where it says life is a curriculum, basically the curriculum gets backfilled. Once you allow yourself the leeway to start pursuing stuff, you kind of start to learn what you're going to need to know, or what you're going to need to grow mentally in order to be the person that can get down that road towards that whatever, meaning towards that goal, towards that vision that you have.
I'm going to be hearing someone who's listening to this and saying, okay, this is great, but how do I discover it? How do I start finding that thing which is going to ignite that passion, which is going to create that purpose, which is going to allow me to want to sacrifice in order to be able to achieve it?
Right. So that actually is in there. Yeah. So I can't give everything away.
Gotta go buy the book.
Yeah. Gotta buy the book. At best bookstores where every book's going to be sold.
$25.99.
So I believe when someone says that they are being sincere in saying that. I think that I actually think that they're just blind to their surroundings. Meaning, again, I'm not sure where generationally to take this, but I'm saying like there might be certain. Again, I'm unfortunately or fortunately not so much on social media, but I'm saying like, but the algorithm is the same, which is you start focusing on something, and so it starts feeding you that, and you start seeing that, but it's feeding you what you have an interest in. So like, are you even aware of what you're starting to watch a lot of?
But on TikTok as well.
particular TikTok.
I don't have TikTok, by the way. I don't have it on my.
I think that you did have some TikTok videos.
No,
there was a
time I didn't realize the degree to which the Chinese own TikTok. But once I figured that out, I deleted it and haven't had it for years. Yeah.
So stop investigating him. No, I'm just kidding. No, but seriously though. So my point though is like what I would say to, let's say a older generation is like, what books are on your shelf? What magazines are you reading? Like if you go into a bookstore in the airport, like where are you? Like, are you going to the Travel and Leisure?
These are
are you
guides.
going to business? Are you going to
these
cars?
Are like,
these are inklings of something.
There's signposts along the way.
Yes, they're definitely signposts and. You're drawn for that. Now, I don't know why you're drawn for that, but you are. And so, again, the classic question, which is a cliche question, but it's a really important question is that if you didn't need to do whatever it is that you're doing right now and you could do whatever you wanted, what would that be? Mm-hmm. And there's some people that they would be racing cars or going to space
so
or jumping out of planes or whatever. But my point is that it's... I don't want to be like dismissive of them. Like I kind of feel like it's actually a lie, or they're lying to themselves, or they're just have not yet been open to seeing themselves or what their experiences are.
That's an important point. They haven't yet discovered it because, in a former life, I spent a lot of time with teenagers because I was running this organization called Youth Directions, which I started, and I went to schools, I did workshops, we did private coaching for like wealthier kids, to help teenagers try and figure this out. It was called Career Focused Purpose in Life, which there are a number of...
And didn't you say there's like a website that people actually...
Yeah, there is. I don't know whether it's still up there. But the point is that, there's a few times in people's lives when they hit very significant potential forks in the road. One is when a person has to go to college, and then a career, and then when people look to retire. Retirement is also like, what do I do in retirement? It's really interesting that the activity which is, at least this was 20 years ago when I was looking at this, the activity which people add most to their life post-retirement is watching TV.
You're saying that's the activity that people end up most doing?
Yeah, they end up adding a lot of that activity. They end up adding a lot of in their life post-retirement is watching TV. People leave a career and they don't know what they're going to do. And
I actually would say to some degree that's because they haven't had that sense of purpose all along.
Well, so some people have. They just don't know what the next stage is. They don't know how to channel it into the next stage.
That might be.
You have like 8 to 9 hours of your day, and if you're commuting, which now opens up, and you can't do that previous.
Right, but I would make the argument, like back in the day and that day was a Tuesday. No, sorry, that's a old comedian used to use that joke. But so back in like the shtetl, let's say, after the guy retired, I'm kind of joking about it. Like I don't know if they ever retired, but like if they had more time on their hands, they're gonna go like learn more Gemara or say more Tehillim or do like they're going to do something because they had that. All along, there was something that they wanted that they were being prevented from doing.
But you don't know if they felt purpose in that. And very often, people retire and they die very, very soon afterwards.
Yeah, and that's because...
a lack of purpose. Right? So these are... Anyway, there are junctions in people's lives where purpose becomes very, very important. And I think you're absolutely right. Like, if people had an overriding purpose throughout and they didn't just be making money...
Meaning not job-dependent, not career-dependent,
And they understood the arc of their life. It would be much easier for them. And that is getting to know yourself first. You have to know yourself. And if you know yourself, you understand all these things.
Right.
I've sat with kids and adults and asked them these questions. Like, okay, what do you enjoy doing in life? And I get answers like, I like eating. If you're a young male, I like girls.
Okay.
I like playing basketball. I like playing football. You get a lot of these answers, which are you together with every other young man or young woman on the planet. In other words, it's very difficult for people to actually pinpoint something which is very unique within their own experiences, which kind of really lights their fire.
Right.
So for the person who you go through the list and they're like, there's nothing really which kind of motivates them. They're doing okay, but there's nothing which really excites them. What is your tip for that person?
Well, so what's interesting to me about that is that I feel like what I want to take it at like one of the examples. I like to play basketball, right?
Yeah.
So there's a whole world that exists that's called basketball, like a world. And when I say that, what I mean is there's the basketball players, there's the trainers, there's the people that work in the stadiums, there's the people that do the promotions, there's the people that do the dances on the floors, there's the people that are behind the cameras, there's the people that are going down the line. Okay, now I can only
There's basketball adjacent. There's basketball adjacent rather than just playing it.
And also, like, do you read anything about it? Like, are you reading, like, again, I don't even know if is Sports Illustrated out there or whatever.
The question is, can the love for basketball, the game, infuse a passion to be a basketball photographer?
Again, it's not so much infused. It's like, I actually think that if you dug deeper into that person, inherently in that whole subset of or that sub world, there's something that they're actually interested in. And if I said, let's say you can't be a professional basketball player, but you love basketball, where do you see yourself fitting in that entire world of things? If I said I could get you a job anywhere, where would that be? Again, I think that it's like you just have to.
That is the classical response to what I'm saying.
Okay. Is that bad or good? Did I?
No. Where it breaks down is that when a kid likes playing basketball, that is the thing which lights their fire about actually playing the basketball. Basketball wasn't the greatest example. I meant eating food was a better example. Someone who says, because basketball actually you can tease out, well, what I would say, what aspects do you enjoy about basketball? Is it like the competitiveness of it? Is it like the hand-eye coordination that you're really good at? Are there aspects of you like the teamwork? Like these are all aspects which you can take out of the actual game of basketball and figure out where else would that apply, where you could be just as excited about it.
It's just as true with eating. And again,
good. Yeah. So, but a kid who says I love eating, go on, because I've always struggled with trying to figure out, what aspects of you enjoy about eating, which makes it unique, which you can then take that.
Right. So again, this is just like on the fly exploring this.
Yeah.
But food is chemistry, meaning, I mean, like quite literally.
Yeah.
To be perfectly honest or frank, I do not like cooking, and I'm not a foodie at all. Like, I don't understand it probably in the same way maybe you don't. Like, do I like good food? Sure. Like, if I just kind of ate
bland food,
I could do it. Like, like, I'd like a little bit more flavor as a preference, but like, there's people that are like really into eating.
Yeah, okay? It's a functional thing for you.
So, but for people that you're talking about, like the chemical reactions behind what it is, like there is, like when you talk to these like professional chefs that are making like unbelievable food, there's a full science behind that. So
absolutely.
So all I mean to say is like, the problem is like, if you and I were going to have that conversation with that kid, we're out of our element because we don't even know what to be curious on, because it's
I think if they're foodies, you're absolutely right. There's a lot to explore. There's a lot to explore there. It's like when the kid will tell me, and this is that they would like a certain aspect of, with girls. Yeah. So the question is like, okay, like there are careers in that direction too, but is it like something unique about that? I had a guy who worked for me, and he was going for a career to become a sex therapist. That was his thing. Right. He was absolutely fascinated by it, more than the average person.
What I was going to say was psychology. In other words, that's the, like, again, I might use it to hijack them into psychology by saying, like, if you just know these psychological tricks, you'll be able to have more relationship experiences or whatever. But
what about like creating some kind of program? Because this is kind of what I ended up working on. Creating a program for people to sample things. If you don't like food, for example, let's take that example. It could be that I could take you to a restaurant, a Michelin star restaurant, where they come out with samples. You sit there for 8 hours,
right,
and they bring you in. I've never really experienced this, but eventually you'll come out saying, "I just had a culinary experience that I've never had before, and I thought I didn't like food, dude. Now I love food."
So, and I had that experience with going to a winery actually in Israel recently. Now, I like wine. Everyone that knows me knows that I have a general objection to the marginal difference between a perfectly decent.
You poo-poo it. You're like, yeah.
Now, that being said, I'm not saying the winery that I went to was super expensive either. But the experience that I had,
Yeah.
I became passionate about this wine and this winery. Like it's one of only 13 that uses gravity for its process as opposed to other wineries. And because it's because it's gravity, they don't have to use pumps. And since they don't have to use pumps, they don't have to use sulfites. Because when you use a pump, it takes some of the seeds, which are bitter. In order to remove the bitterness, they have to put in sulfites. But this winery, they don't have to do that. So you can taste the difference. And I'm just saying as an example.
And now you're a wine connoisseur, at least for this winery.
No, not that a connoisseur. My point is that like through experiences, you change.
Yeah.
And so like in the whole process in the book is basically trying to experiment and try to have different experiences. And like you said with the Michelin star place, like you now see things differently because you actually experienced it. So the only way you can get through that, and I do think unfortunately for some kids it's a little bit harder because for reasons that are inexplicable to me,
some kids don't have the resources.
That might be true. In other words, like to reference back to the Alter Rebbe. The Alter Rebbe was like people will like whenever you're learning Tanya, like people will always give these like exceptional reasons. Like, what about the person that's got a mental condition? Does this? So, in other words, the Alter Rebbe's thing is focused on the quote unquote normal person, meaning the average person this works for. So I'm saying like with the assumptions of an average kid, whatever that average kid is. I feel like for inexplicable reasons, there are some kids that I'll call them bumps on the log. I don't know what gets them moving, but to force them to have different experiences might be beneficial. How you force them, I don't know. It would be better if it's like with positive reinforcement and blah, blah, blah. But I'm just saying like people have to have different experiences in order that they can get different senses.
Get off the couch, stop scrolling.
And then they start to feel differently.
Yeah.
That's where I'm coming from.
Yeah. For sure.
People have to have experiences. That's like...
I think that this also like actually fits very well within the seeking ecstasy.
Okay.
Because I fundamentally believe that having...
That's why we call you a fundamentalist.
Yeah. I never knew anyone called me a fundamentalist. But they would be wrong.
Back in Colorado, maybe they did at some point.
People may have thought so. Yeah. So... But I kind of really think that going back to even the seeking ecstasy, what William James talks about the varieties of religious experiences in that book, they have to be experienced. He actually had an experience in psychedelics, and this book was written in 1910.
Okay.
So it was a very long time ago. But he had an experience in psychedelics which changed his whole worldview, and it caused him to write this book. And so there are these experiences which people can have which can really, really impact them and change them in a big way. So I think that when you're talking about ecstasy or religious ecstasy, that is an experience that one must have. And I think that when you listen to people talk about religion or about God, and you can tell they haven't experienced it, you can tell, you can notice. They haven't done something to experience it. And you can notice that for them it's very theoretical. Even though they might be themselves a very religious person, but since they haven't experienced it, and so how do you experience it? What I find really interesting is that going back to Tanya, if you're a Chabadnik, which you might be listening to this podcast, that's not the only way you can experience it. But in Tanya, it actually provides you a methodology of how to experience it through this thing called hispanenus, or contemplative meditation. And it astounds me how few people actually embark upon that journey of experiencing it through that kind of contemplation. It's almost not done. And so how can you really understand what you're talking about if you haven't gone out there and tried to sample things, to try and experience it, to try and whet your appetite to see maybe you will love it, maybe you won't love it. So it's really, I encourage basically through what you're saying in this book, what you need to do for success in life is the same thing you want to do to be successful in your spiritual journey and to reach ecstasy in any kind of way. And you've written, I think, a very, very good blueprint. So any of the religious people who are worried that they're going to, that this might, or any of the people who are worried that this might, just read it from the viewpoint that you're going on a religious journey, and I think you'll gain a lot out of it as well. So really you have written the Tanya.
I have not. Just in case anybody out there would be confused.
You know, like they say that some of the Rebbe, they were learning Mer Nevuchim al Pi Chassidus. You can learn the wonder effect al Pi Chassidus if you want.
It's sweet and kind of you. I appreciate it.
So anyway, yeah, it's been wonderful sitting down having this conversation.
Yeah, it's amazing. I enjoyed it a lot, and I'm sure we'll have a part 2 at some future point. It could either be about the book or about whatever else.
Yeah.
Always a pleasure.
All right. Well, thank you.
Sure. Thank you.